Do you want to go fast, but you can't afford a Headhunter? Do you want to relive the glory of Yesterleague? Winter Orb is back, baby, and I think I've made some improvements on a previously tested build. I actually found this build on Reddit, and I happened to find it after looking at some of the timeless jewels, and I noticed that one of the timeless jewels that I will go over in this build allows you to not only save a bunch of points that you can put into life, but also frees up one of your ring slots and your boot slots and utilizes an abundance of minus mana cost gear that is available in this. So in this build today, we are going to go over a fresh look at the self-curse, flask-fueled Winter Orb build that can clear maps at an insane speed. This build is best for clearing low-level legions such as Glacier. You can also use it in any linear maps such as Strand, Mesa, many others, Tropical Island. Really fantastic for any kind of linear map like that, and you will feel like a god while you do it. So I hope you enjoy today's build. We are going to jump into it, and if you want to see new Path of Exile videos roughly every other day, about 3 times a week, go ahead and hit that subscribe and the bell icon. Thank you, and into the build we go. Alright, here we are on a Juggernaut playing Winter Orb, and the interesting thing about this is previously, this build required a couple of additional items. In a ring slot, it required Chevron's Revelation, and in a boot spot, you needed the Omayokan Carnal Boots. You also needed to have Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery to make this work. And just to explain the build before we get too much into that, the build uses Shaper's Presence, which allows effects on us to expire more slowly, which includes all of our buffs. We have many buffs, but most importantly, it's going to be things like our mana flask, and it's going to be our own temporal chains that we'll be casting onto ourselves using Shackles of the Wretched. We're also using Soul Thirst, which makes it so that we have Soul Eater during any flask effect, but we lose the souls gained once we use a flask again. And so with these 3 items, casting Temporal Chains on ourselves and getting Soul Eater, combined with the ability of the Juggernaut to not be able to have our action speed modified below base value, we're able to get huge speed ups. For those of you who don't know, Soul Eater gives, I believe, 5% attack speed and cast speed per soul that you get. So this ends up being a huge amount. We're killing hundreds of monsters, so we're literally getting, you know, thousands of percent of attack speed and move speed. Now, attack speed and cast speed. Now, the important thing is, Winter Orb's projectile frequency is actually increased based on the cast speed that you have, and even though we're being slowed down in terms of our move speed, we use Leap Slam to get around. So since it's not able to be modified below its base value, it's still gaining all the benefit from all that attack speed we're getting. So this is kind of the idea. So the idea is we need to drain all of our mana so that we can never have mana, so that we can have a very long flask effect. Very important that you have a saturated, sanctified mana flask. Sanctified has the highest base duration of any mana flask, and saturated reduces the recovery rate. We're also going to be using Alchemist to increase the flask duration even longer. So now this is kind of counteracted by Soul Thirst, reduced flask effect duration. This has a range from 20 to 30. I have a 27 here, which isn't very good. I need to get a better one, but it works just pretty well. We're also using Temp Chain's effect on our helmet to further increase the duration or the effect temp chains has on us, and we are using curse effect. So we're using curse effect up here and here. All right. So as far as the Militant Faith Jewel, we're also using channeling skills, deal increased damage per 10 devotion, and increase effect of non-curse auras per devotion. When you're looking for a Venarius Jewel, what you want to do is you want to put in all of the beneficial effects in your PoE.trade and put a count of 2. So just type in devotion, look for ones that you actually want for this build. I believe there's elemental damage, there's all resist, which might help with gearing. There's all sorts of things. Now the big problem is with this specific, with the agnostic, maximum energy shield is 0, and while not on full life, you sacrifice 20% of mana per second to recover that much life. So since we are recovering life that way and sacrificing our mana, if we have not full life, we will be at 0 mana basically all the time. This does 2 things. First of all, it means normally we wouldn't be able to cast Winter Orb. We fix this by simply using minus mana cost skills jewelry. And so we have 2 rings with minus mana cost, and we also have Lucidity, which gives us minus 3 mana cost to channeling skills, for a grand total of minus 18 to cost. That allows us to run a 6-link. You can actually run less if you're running on a 5-link, depending on the mana multipliers. But as you can see, if I take the jewelry off, it costs 14 mana. So for a 6-link, you're going to need at least 14 total on your jewelry, so 2 -7s, or a -6 and a -8. And then you're also going to need the Lucidity. So we have that fixed. But how do we make sure we're not at full life? Well, we use Precision, which gives us some crit chance, which helps us proc our Elemental Overload. So Precision, we're actually supporting with Blood Magic and Blasphemy. So we're turning it into an aura. It's already an aura. We don't need Blasphemy on there. I don't know why I have a Blasphemy. I think I was trying to use Blasphemy temp chains. But it is an aura, so you just need Precision and Blood Magic. And that'll make it so that you're reserving your health. Now, optimally, you want this to be level 1. I accidentally leveled it up to level 2. It's just like 20 less life that I have, so it's not all that big of a deal. But since we're reserving some of our mana is less than full, and our mana is constantly drained. I know I call it mana or mana sometimes, depending, but you know what I mean. Also, for this build, that is pretty much the important part. So the way it functions, I actually have a Sinvicta's Medal in our other hand, and I use cast when damage taken. Alternatively, you can use Curse on Hit with a Blade Vortex. I use cast when damage taken, and perhaps the Blade Vortex Curse on Hit is a little better, but I find this to be fairly reliable anyway. And what we do is we weapon swap to Sinvicta's Medal, which has Rampage, and then we take a hit. This will temp chains our enemies, which will temp chains us. We hold down Winter Orb, get at least 1 kill, and then we weapon swap back. Now we have Rampage started, since we killed when we had Rampage, and then we will be back. The reason I'm using Doriani's Catalyst is it allows me to run 0 regen maps, because we have the elemental damage leached as life. And I'm using a shield for the life and the resistances. However, you can definitely use a juiced up scepter as your second in your offhand instead for a lot more damage when you switch up. I would recommend Doriani's Catalyst to run low or 0 regen, but yeah, this is you can definitely get a nice like spell damage, added flat damage to spells and things like that. Chaos or non-chaos damage as chaos damage, that kind of stuff on another scepter. Elemental damage, of course. So that is pretty much the important things. You're going to need to get a lot of your resistances on your other gear. I am using a carcass jack. I happen to have a 6-link one. This one really helps because Winter Orb scales off area damage, and the overlaps of the explosions are affected by the AoE. So, and then, of course, the Temp Chains helmet. For the 20%, it's in between 5 and 25 chaos right now, depending on what kind of base you want to get. And for the 30%, it's like 2 to 4 exalts. So I have a 20%. If you really want to min-max this build, you'll get a 30%. You'll get a 20% increased mana recovery from flasks with as high life as you can get. Those two things will drastically increase the duration of your life flask, which will really make it last a whole lot longer. Or I'm sorry, from your mana flask. And you want to make sure that you don't hit any other flasks. A lot of people remedy this by having 4 sanctified life flasks and then maybe an emergency or an onslaught flask to get started, something like that. So that is something you can do as well. I currently have onslaught on my Herald of Ice that I'm using. For auras, I'm just using Hatred and Herald of Ice. For our links, I'm using Winter Orb, Infused Channeling, GMP, that's the most important one, Controlled Destruction, Cold to Fire, and Efficacy. And you could use Increased Duration over Cold to Fire normally, but the mana multiplier actually makes it so that Winter Orb costs mana. Cold to Fire is great because it only has that 110% mana multiplier. And I apologize for my fan if you hear that droning in the background, but yeah, I need to get a slower fan at some point. If you want to help with that, support my Patreon in the description below or become a channel member. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to go ahead and show a map. We can do... It's optimized for running lower tier maps, but we can do a higher tier map, so... Well, this isn't particularly high, but I'll just show you in alleyways. We can't run Elemental Reflect. Okay, Enfeeble. So we're going to be a little bit slower in this one, but that's okay. So to prepare, I'll press my weapon swap button. And what we're going to do to get started in mapping with this setup is we're just going to walk up to the closest white mob. This is actually a blue mob. And we're going to weapon swap. We're going to get a couple kills. We're going to switch out. We're going to hit our flask, and then we're going to hold down, make sure we have 10, and we're just going to start leaping around. And every couple of seconds, we want to go and hold down our thing again. Make sure that we're... I need to jump across here. But yeah, as you can see, the flask lasts for quite a while. I'll just go back and loot afterwards. It's pretty nice for... this as well for legions. And a lot of times when you get to this stage, I don't even know what's happening. You'll usually have to press your flask again, which means you'll have to get more kills, and it kind of slows everything down again, and that'll happen in between. This is less likely to happen if you have the build min-max, as the flasks will last a lot longer. But as it currently is, it's also a lot better in Glacier, where you can guarantee that you're going to hit the monolith earlier. And we're just going to press it again. As you can see, our Soul Eater reset again, but that's okay. We can go ahead and make sure that we're killing. And the more dense the area is, the better. So if you're running a nice sextanted up build, it's also pretty slow at boss killing. You can run single target. I see Stormburst because it is a channeling skill. But yeah, the single target in this is quite bad. And that's pretty much it. I mean, we killed most of the monsters there. Not too terribly bad. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to let me know in the comment section below if you have any more suggestions for the build. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I will see you next time.